Oddworld Inhabitants and Lorne Lanning were at E3 this year and did very well. There's a lot to go through, but this basically will encompass all recent Soulstorm news and details about the game that I could find. Lorne Lanning, among other members of the Oddworld Inhabitants team, have been given a lot of interviews lately, in particular in the lead up to their appearance at E3 this year. As a result, we have a lot of information about Oddworld Soulstorm, including about the gameplay and the story of it. I'll start off by detailing what we know about the story so far. The opening cinematic of the game has been shown to journalists, and reportedly it takes place near the end of the game, much like the one from Abe's Oddysee, and then takes you back to the beginning, taking place just after New and Tasty until you reach that point. Very traditional Oddworld stuff here. The cinematic apparently hints at Abe's character growth throughout the game, from a naive, reluctant hero to a battle-hardened veteran. An interesting change from Oddworld Abe's Exodus is that Soulstorm Brew, not the alcoholic beer it used to be, is now an energy drink designed to keep workers awake with high energy to work efficiently in the factories. As a result, they have to be put to sleep at night with snoozies. The drink will still be incredibly addictive, to the point that the Mudokons rely on it so much that any that dare escape their workplace would die within 48 hours from withdrawal symptoms. This is clearly an example of what Lanning says will be Soulstorm delving into deeper shenanigans of corporate dastardliness. Introducing new characters, it will be interesting to see Oddworld Soulstorm do character development, but I suspect we will find out a lot more about Abe, with Lanning saying you'll know more about those stitches in Soulstorm. Every single level will apparently be its own story, complete with an intro and outro. The first level apparently takes place in a fire, and Abe has to save his followers and guide them out of there safely. However, the level that has been showcased by Oddworld Soulstorm at E3 takes place in Comet Depot, and apparently takes place about 60% of the way through the game. As is yet again traditional for Oddworld, there will be multiple endings depending on how many followers you save. Apparently at the end of the game, if you play it like an angel and save everyone, you should have about 1,300 saved Mudokons. At the same time, you could also end the game and have 0 Mudokons, killing everyone instead. In terms of gameplay, Oddworld Soulstorm will essentially be a linear game. However, about 60% of the way through, when you reach Comet Depot, a giant train hub, there will be 5 different terminals, 5 different locations that you can go through in any order. This is yet another element that is traditional Oddworld, with level design like that appearing in Abe's Oddysee and Abe's Exodus. Lorne Lanning keeps on saying the game will be 2.9D, as opposed to the 2.5D of New and Tasty and the 2D of the original games. I feel like Soulstorm executive producer Benny Terry explained this pretty well by saying it's a curved path technology, so we can wind through the world and it works with all of our other systems. It's a big challenge. We invested a lot of time in it, but I think it shows well. You're not just playing a side-scroller like New and Tasty, where you can see pretty things in the distance, but you can never really get to the castle on the top of the hill. This allows you to really explore in Z or Z all the way to the end. Everything you see, you can play. I think that's a pretty good way of summing it up. There will be telescopes placed throughout the map which will allow you to scout out locations in the distance which you'll end up playing, and can also be used to shoot darts. You'll be able to see layers of levels of gameplay in the background with non-playable characters and everything playing in real time. Again, traditional Oddworld, an idea that taken straight from the first few frames of Abe's Oddysee, but as Lorne Lanning puts it, taken a few pumps higher. As a result of the almost 3D gameplay of Soulstorm, a lot of elements of the original games are having to be adapted to the new format. For example, in the originals you could of course hide in shadows. This was adapted in New and Tasty as hiding instead in Steam, but in Soulstorm they've adapted it slightly better, I'd say, as you can now hide in lockers instead. The lockers also serve a double purpose, as you can also search them for items. These items will be used in the new crafting system implemented in Oddworld Soulstorm. One of the more role-playing game elements introduced in the game, Lorne Lanning says that there will be 2 economies that the player can utilise. The first will be a scavenger's economy, made up of items Abe can pick up, such as empty beer bottles, rubber bands, and consumer products that can be bought using moolah. These can be put together to create all new items, including flamethrowers and fire extinguishers, and change various items in the ways that tools work. For example, I believe you can collect empty bottles, use a recycling machine to cash in those bottles for moolah, use the moolah to buy jawbreakers from a vending machine, and you can use those to just throw at a Slig and it will temporarily knock them out. I believe you can incapacitate a Slig further by combining your jawbreaker with tape, and then the weapon you craft will allow you to throw the jawbreaker at the Slig, which will also tie him up. Sligs can also be pickpocketed for more supplies and items, and so on. It carries on from there. These items can also be given to and used by your followers who actually do stuff for themselves in this game, unlike the inept followers of the previous games. If someone told you to walk off a cliff, would you?
Okay.
In Soulstorm, they'll be able to do everything Abe can, which hopefully means they won't be killing themselves in easily preventable deaths anymore. You'll essentially collect Mudokons and build them into a gang to tactically position them to use to your advantage by telling them to act in certain ways, at least whether to be aggressive or passive, as well as by using GameSpeak commands such as stay and follow. You'll be able to have up to 300 at a time, essentially building up your own army. To me, it kinda seems like Soulstorm is appearing to look like a revolutionary simulator. As I mentioned earlier, you can also gift items to your followers which they can independently use. For example, if you give a Mudokon a bottle of water, he will use that to try and extinguish another one of your allies who's on fire, for example. Speaking of which, Soulstorm Brew will be highly flammable, and as a result can be used essentially as an incendiary grenade, and from what's been shown, it seems like there will be a lot of fire in Soulstorm, which can change the layout of a level as it can destroy platforms and make characters go a different way depending on your actions, which is quite interesting. I don't think there's really ever been destructible environments in Oddworld before. When you find a Mudokon working and you recruit them to join you, they'll take off their work hats and join the fight. However, one thing I really like is that your consequences have actions here, because those Mudokons are workers. They're doing a job, and if they're suddenly pulled away from that work, eventually the guards are going to notice that no one's doing that job anymore because the factory becomes less efficient. As a result, there's an alert system in Soulstorm which will rise, and as it rises, guards become more aware of your actions. I believe it will look something like this. I'm joking, here's what it actually looks like, or at least what Oddworld Inhabitants have done with it so far. There's also these things called guard towers, which seem to be where the Sligs live, with the number representing how many Sligs are currently in it. A impossibly large bunch of enemies resting in an impossibly small hut. Traditional Oddworld right there. As the alert level rises, presumably more Sligs will come out, but I've also noticed that they have an alarm bell on top, which if shot or rung in other ways, will cause the Sligs to come out wondering what the devil is going on. I think it also seems to have a searchlight on them as well, so presumably if you walk by it, you'll be visible to them, causing the Sligs to come out and shoot you. The second economy that the player utilises in Soulstorm is something that we know very little about, but Lanning calls it a spiritual economy, and I believe it involves your followers giving you something, I think called chi, and this will power up your spiritual powers such as possession or something like that. Abe will also receive positive and negative karma throughout the game for his actions, and I think that might have something to do with it as well. Soulstorm will allow the player to choose how to play, whether they want to be stealthy or more aggressive. However, the player is apparently rewarded for playing more stealthily, and at the end of every level there is a tally of how you did, and you'll be given a rating of either bronze, silver, gold, platinum or diamond. This tally is apparently optional though, as Lanning I believe says that it can be turned off, as he knows some people would rather just get a final tally at the end of the game. The setting of Oddworld Soulstorm will, according to Lorne, be about 50% industrial and 50% natural. To put it in his words, we start off in a hideout with some more native environments. You escape at towering inferno, then we get into old abandoned towns and are a little more like a stranger. These old mill towns and mining towns. We have ancient ruins, pretty spooky looking areas. We wind up at gas stations for trains, big fuel depots. Then we go to a Slig barracks and the necro mines, a mining factory that's built on top of a graveyard basically. The reactions to what has been shown so far has been very positive. I read pretty much, if not every article or media published on Oddworld Soulstorm. I didn't find any negative one. I noted that the article from an organisation called Ars Technica, which I've never heard of before, which that's not an insult, I just don't keep up to date on game magazines. I noted that they seem to go into it quite sceptical, but come out of it very hopeful. And I noticed that Lorne even mentioned this, saying, Ars Technica is one tough and notoriously critical customer, so it's a great thing for us to see their optimistic support in the faith that we may actually deliver something worthy. So that's a pretty good sign. Oddworld Inhabitants were praised for their independence with no big publishers interfering creatively in their work, and for having the patience to not rush this game and take the time they feel they need to do Oddworld justice. One common theme all the critics seem to mention is that it is clear Lorne Lanning and the folks working on the game have a background in film, as they mention Soulstorm as having beautiful cinematic gameplay. Clearly, Oddworld Inhabitants have impressed a lot of people with what they've done so far, despite Soulstorm still being a year away from being released due sometime in 2020. For what they presented in E3, they were rewarded handsomely with many awards. As an article on the Oddworld website says, we were stunned to receive several awards. It started with a nomination from Oz Gamers for their Best of E3 award, which we eventually won. Then Laptop Magazine delivered their own Best of E3 award. Mashable brought the Best of E3 award through, and Rock Paper Shotgun arrived soon after with their Editor's Choice award. The Enemy was next with Best of E3 Indie Game award. Finally, we got an E3 Pixel Dior award for Best Independent Game from Joe Video. Clearly, Oddworld still has what it takes to impress at E3, which is a really good sign if you ask me. Clearly, their hard work and patience has paid off, according to these journalists and organisations at least, and there seems to be a lot of hope that Soulstorm will be a really great game.
Hello, follow me.